All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating ancient theological narrative about the very origin of human existence. We're going to be looking closely at a profoundly deep text titled Dust and Destiny, the divine origin of man. Now, whether you're encountering these concepts for the very first time or you're revisiting them, this source material offers just a beautifully structured look at how humanity's beginning is described. And spoiler alert, it's not described as some random occurrence, but as a deeply intentional act by a creator. It's literally the story of the exact moment Earth received a soul.
So, to set the scene, the text asks us to imagine a pre-human universe, one defined by absolute silence. Before there were nations, before there were kings, before history began to write its first chapter, there was silence. It's a pretty powerful hook, right? I mean, just imagine an existence with zero cities, no languages, no music, absolutely no human voice anywhere, only the eternal presence of God. And you know, this concept of silence, it isn't just about the absence of noise. The text actually uses it to represent the absence of a very specific kind of relationship within the cosmos. And that kicks off our chronological journey with Phase 1, the silent universe. This represents the earliest state of creation in the text. According to the source, the universe already displayed immense, breathtaking physical power. You had these massive galaxies stretching across unimaginable distances. Mountains stood tall, oceans moved with incredible, relentless purpose. Birds filled the skies, and creatures walked the earth. Yet despite all of this majestic glory, something vital was missing. The creation reflected physical power, sure, but it lacked a crucial relationship. None of it could actually know the Creator personally.
The source material highlights a really stark contrast here. On one hand, you have this incredibly active universe, stretching galaxies, purposefully moving oceans. But on the other hand, you have the missing element. There was no human voice to actually know the Creator. Then, the text tells us, came a moment unlike any other in the history of existence. The Creator paused. He didn't just speak another command. He didn't create another animal. Instead, he prepared to form a being totally unlike anything that had ever existed before.
Which brings us to Phase 2, formed from dust. Let's see how the text builds toward the physical creation of the very first human. The narrative tells us that the ground beneath the earth became the raw material for a divine masterpiece. God reached down into the dust and began to shape a man. Really think about the physical nature of that imagery for a second. You have the highest power in the universe stooping down to work with literally the lowliest, most basic material imaginable, dust. The text breaks down this divine action sequence so beautifully. Step 1, gathering that dust from the earth. Step 2, intentionally shaping the masterpiece. And the source really emphasizes that every single detail was entirely intentional. Every feature carried profound purpose. The text vividly states that the very same hands that formed the stars now meticulously crafted fingers. The one who painted the heavens shaped human eyes. The architect of the entire universe crafted a face that would, one day, look back up toward heaven.
But then, we hit a dramatic pause in the narrative, perfectly formed, but lifeless. Using this almost staccato rhythm, the source material highlights the dramatic tension of a completed physical form that still lacked a living soul. The figure remained completely motionless. All the potential was right there. The intricate design was flawlessly finished. But that crucial spark of life, it was totally absent.
And that brings us to Phase 3, the breath of life. The narrative hits its first major climax right here, transitioning from mere physical molding to a full-on spiritual awakening. The God who literally spoke entire worlds into existence leaned close to his creation, and he breathed. The text is very specific and honestly very poignant here. It notes that this wasn't merely air being transferred, it wasn't just basic biological life kickstarting. It was the very breath that came directly from the Creator himself.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact moment dust became destiny. In a single instant, the earth became alive. A physical body became a living soul. The text details this incredible awakening of Adam. For the very first time, human eyes opened. For the first time, a human heart beat. For the first time, a man stood in the presence of God. This marked the beginning of humanity, created not by random forces, not by some cosmic accident or chance, but by precise divine design.
Moving right along to Phase 4, the image of God. The text now introduces a foundational theological concept that completely separates humanity from the rest of the created universe. Among all created things, the source notes only humanity was made in the image of God. But what does that actually mean, according to this ancient narrative?
Well, the crucial point here is that the phrase image of God absolutely doesn't imply a physical resemblance to the Creator. Instead, it means humanity carried qualities that reflected Him. These are unique, elevated capacities designed specifically for relationship. We're talking about the cognitive and spiritual abilities to love, to reason, to choose, to create, to communicate, and to worship. Humanity was designed from the ground up to have a relationship with God unlike any other creature in existence. Next, we're introduced to the conditions of the Garden of Eden, an environment perfectly tailored for this new humanity to absolutely thrive in. Adam was placed in a beautiful garden, overflowing with abundance and life. No fear, no sickness, no death, no loneliness. Every single day was filled with unbroken peace and direct fellowship with the Creator. The text really invites us to imagine what that must have been like, walking with God, hearing His voice without any confusion whatsoever, and living in a world completely untouched by pain. That was humanity's beginning. Now, shifting from the ancient timeline into more of a philosophical reflection, the source material focuses on Phase 5, our divine purpose. The story of man's creation, according to the text, reveals something far deeper about the core nature of human existence, something that goes way beyond just a historical or ancient account. The text beautifully captures this dual nature of humanity. On one side, you have the dust. This reminds us of our humility. It represents our earthly nature, our inherent fragility, and the temporary aspect of our physical bodies. But then you have the breath, and that reminds us of our divine purpose. It represents our eternal nature, our immense value, and our everlasting significance. It's this profound idea that we are both earthly and eternal, fragile, yet deeply, deeply valuable.
From here, the source actually pivots to a deeply personal address. Because every single person who has ever lived carries the mark of that first moment of creation, the intentionality behind Adam's creation applies directly to every human life today. Every heartbeat echoes the breath God first breathed into Adam. Because of that, the text asserts powerfully, you are not an accident, you are not a mistake, you are not forgotten. The same God who formed Adam from dust sees you today, He knows your name, and He knows your story. So the creation of man wasn't simply the beginning of human history. According to this text, it was the beginning of God's desire to have a relationship with His creation. And that invitation? It remains today. We're going to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with a pretty provocative question to chew on. How does this ancient invitation to relationship shape human destiny today? I really want you to ponder how the Creator's original desire for connection continues to echo through your own modern human existence. Thanks for joining me as we unpack this profound narrative and keep exploring.